Shutdown Silliness. I'm Jeff Stein with today's Iowa Politics Report. As things go these days in Washington, this was actually well ahead of schedule. On Saturday night, Congress passed a continuing resolution to keep the government open with 3 full hours to spare. Now comes the obligatory sigh of relief by politicians, unfortunately, with the promise that we'll be right back here in mid-November, because there's nothing to suggest an actual resolution will happen until the very last minute, if at all. Yes, government stayed open, but that's not to suggest that things were running as business as usual for agencies over the past week. Since everyone expected a shutdown, the politicians on both sides said that's what was going to happen. Well, agencies were told to develop and be ready to implement a shutdown strategy. So countless hours of otherwise productive time was spent not doing the day-to-day work of government for the people, but instead determining how to close the doors, complete with printing of signs and the like. Now, a cynical person would say all they had to do was dust off the plan used the last however many times, because this is not new territory. And I'm sure that is what was done in many situations, but it's still complete nonsense. And it's not just government. Private businesses had to figure out what-if scenarios. For example, close to home, the Federal Communications Commission requires radio stations to file reports at the end of each quarter on the community issues they addressed and programs both on the air and in the community used to discuss these issues. The report is supposedly due on the first day of the month after the quarter, but they allow you to file it by the 10th and still be considered timely. Well, the FCC issued notice that it would somehow stay open through October 20th, even if there was a government shutdown, and that their online portals for filing reports, those would stay open. But very few of us were willing to take that chance, given first an unrelated system failure at the beginning of this year that screwed up all manner of submission of reports, and the fact that during the last government shutdown, the online system was taken down. So last Friday, many of us got word that we should prepare and file our reports no later than Saturday, ahead of any shutdown, just in case. Because if your business depends on having a license from the government, you want to avoid doing anything that would jeopardize the license. No one wanted to not file a report, then have the system shut down, and later have the government hold non-filing against you, even though it was their fault. We could all see that happening. So that's how I spent my Saturday, preparing and filing reports for our 4 stations. I'm told it was a record warm, nice day outside, and that certain sports contests were especially interesting. I wouldn't know, which was especially aggravating because within an hour of hitting send on that last report, the deal was reached and the shutdown was averted. Sure, I now have free time at work this week, time that had been set aside for doing reports. And that quarterly burden is off my list for another 3 months, so that's great. But this whole thing is well beyond silly. And despite the outcome, we all were affected and will be again. And that's the Iowa Politics Report for Monday, October 2nd on Twitter, Instagram, Getter, Threads, and Truth Social at Iowa Politics. I'm Jeff Stein on News Talk 1540 KXEL.